Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. During the previous night, the Russians launched massive missile strike mainly in the central part of Ukraine. As you can see on this map, the main explosions took place in Kiev, Zhytomyr, Khmelnytsky, and many other different towns and settlements exactly in the central part. The Ukrainian sources are saying that as a result of air defense, they managed to bring down 31 of 31, let's say, drones Shahed, 12 missiles of 12 missiles, and the Ukrainians haven't managed to bring down even a single hypersonic missile, Kinzhal. So this is the statistics that we receive from the Ukrainian sources. The Russians are saying that they managed to deal significant damage, to destroy few, to shut down few, let's say, power plants, and to deal damage, which is the most important, to the military airfield that located in the vicinity of the town by the name of Starokonstantinov. The Ukrainian sources published the video of air defense work and how the Ukrainians were trying to bring down the Russian missiles. As you can see on this, let's say, video, the Ukrainians managed to destroy either a drone or maybe missile or something like that. I'll remind you that according to information we have, in the vicinity of Starokonstantinov, there is an airfield, and according to, let's say, information we have, the Ukrainians were planning to use this airfield for F-16s, and also this airfield is already have, let's say, bunkers, let's say, different warehouses and different, let's say, military constructions for Su-24 aircrafts that can use the Storm Shadows and different, let's say, different missiles of Western production. So this town was the main target for the Russians. I believe that during the day we're going to receive more updates about the results of the strikes in the area. From the other hand, the Ukrainians also tried to attack Russia. We have some updates from Belgorod. Probably when talking about Belgorod, this was something like, let's say, act of revenge on the situation in Kharkiv. If you remember, yesterday the Russians, as a result of guided bomb strike, managed to destroy a big warehouse in the northern part of Kharkiv that Ukrainians were using inside of, let's say, residential area. And now, as an act of revenge, the Ukrainians were bombing Belgorod with multiple launch rocket systems. And also, according to information we have, the Ukrainians launched up to 10 missiles in direction of Crimea. Later, the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of air defense works, they managed to bring down every single missile. So now let's move to further important updates. And today, the, let's say, SIN sources published very interesting information that the Russians are about to finish construction the biggest base ever on the territory of Ukraine in Lugansk area. So during the previous 2 years, the Russians, as you can see, have completed the construction of a very big base that located in the vicinity of Lugansk, the capital of Lugansk People Republic. And this is very important because during the May we already discussed the video and the satellite photos about another Russian base that they've been building also for the previous few years, and they're about to finish. And we are talking about this airfield that also is located very close to the borderline. Both these updates confirming that the Russians do have plans for further offensive operation, for further deep inside movement on the territory of Ukraine, because either the airfield that was built, let's say, along the border, and this base in the vicinity of Lugansk confirms that the Russians need additional military infrastructure to be able to have military operations and to operate along Dnipro River, deep inside of the territory of Ukraine, let's say in the vicinity of Kremenchuk, Poltava, let's say in the vicinity of Dnipro, because the current infrastructure is not enough to operate on these directions, because the main bases are very far from the line of combat contact, and most important, are very far from the central part of Ukraine, somewhere in Rostov-on-Don and somewhere, let's say, in Kursk, and far behind Belgrade and many other different towns. So as you can see, the Russians do have plans, and they have already finished creation of additional infrastructure. Now let's move to the line of combat contact. We have updates, a lot of updates from Zaporizhzhia direction. If you remember, just in the previous video we were talking about increased activity of the Russian forces on Kupiansk and Stepnogorsk direction. We discussed the number of FPV drone strikes, the number of artillery strikes on the direction, and we made the conclusion that most likely the Russians do have some plans on this area. And this night we got the first update confirming this, let's say, theory. The Russians captured significant number of prisoners of war somewhere in the vicinity between Kupiansk and Petykhatki. The Russians captured them as let's say, for the purpose to get additional information. So I believe, based on all these things, that's most likely during the next few weeks the Russians will make first attempts to attack the Ukrainian positions on the line Lugovo, Zherebyanki, Petykhatki, Stepova, and of course Vasilievka, Stepnogorsk. So this is going to be a very interesting operation, most likely. Now let's move further. We have additional updates from the stronghold by the name of Krasnohorivka. The Ukrainian sources published another video of another Russian attack in direction of Krasnohorivka citadel. You know that every single Ukrainian big town has like high-rise building area, which is let's say a local citadel for every single town. On this video we can see another big Russian convoy, up to 3 tanks or 2 tanks and 4 personnel carriers. They reached the outskirts of the, let's say, town without any resistance and without any counterattacks from the Ukrainian side. The Russians managed to land infantry, and the Russians started capturing the buildings, the first buildings in high-rise area. On this video we can see just a small episode of that attack, and if we return back on map, the Russians were moving something like this, and from this area in this direction the Russians landed their infantry in the vicinity of these high-rise buildings, and most likely the Russians captured them. So summarize everything, we can make a conclusion that the final battle for the most important defense belt, for the most important stronghold of Krasnohorivka, let's say, has started. So we'll see what is going to be next, but if the Russians are able to capture this territory, then the Ukrainians are no longer have any more or less reliable foothold inside of the village, and most likely they will be forced to fall back. Now let's move further. We have updates from different mappers. Let's say Deep State confirms the Russian progress in Umanska, and that Umanska is already under complete Russian control. We have additional updates from Chasiv Yar. The Russians during the previous night conducted massive TOS flamethrower strikes in the eastern part of Chasiv Yar. This video is very important because according to the previous videos we received from the direction, this part of Chasiv Yar was already captured by the Russians, but now we see that the Russians start pummeling the area once again, which confirms that most likely the Russians were forced to abandon their positions due to very heavy losses and very heavy battle and clashes in this area. Starting of the 26th of May, we start receiving updates about the situation in Bilogorovka. The Russian sources published the video of how they were storming the Ukrainian positions to the south of the landfill. This very long 7 minutes video, how the Russian infantry under fire of artillery of Ukrainian forces under FPV drone fire were moving along the trenches from the south to the north, and how they managed to reach almost the most southern outskirts of the landfill, and how they managed to capture this territory, and after that how they managed to dig in deeper. Very long video showing the movements in a few kilometers from the south to the north, and pretty successful. So we will adjust the map, and most likely this video confirms at least control over the southern part of the landfill and these territories. So very important video. Furthermore, we have additional updates from the Kupiansk direction, which is very active these days. The Russians continue pummeling and bombing the Ukrainian forces with FABs. On this video we can see another temporary position of armored forces of Ukraine that was discovered by the Russians and destroyed as a result of FAB attack. And important updates are coming from the villages Berestovaya, Kislovka, Kotlarovka, Ivanovka. The Russian sources first published the video at the beginning of Russian offensive operation in Ivanovka. First, the village was bombed by TOS flamethrower systems, and as a result of after the strike, the Russians launched the ground operation. And I remind you that yesterday we got a lot of reports confirming that Ivanovka was fell in, let's say, in the Russian hands. Furthermore, we got Deep State confirms also the Russian control over the territory. Starting this morning, we get additional updates about further Russian progress in the vicinity Kislovka Kotlarovka, and according to some sources, the Russians managed to establish complete control over the Ukrainian positions, let's say, between the railways and the, let's say, N26 road, and currently this gray zone, this let's say white cloud, is already under Russian Russian control as well. So the Russians are moving. Once again, I'll remind you that Ukrainians have redeployed significant number of forces to Kharkiv direction, let's say in favor of Kharkiv, but now we see that Ukrainians are losing their positions all over the line of combat contact in Ukraine. The Russians continue effective counter-artillery duels, and the Ukrainians, of course, suffer significant losses. And most likely today we're going to receive additional updates, and according to information we have, most likely today the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation will confirm complete control over the village by the name of Paraskovivka that located on Novomikhailivka direction. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.